So welcome everyone. Hi, and thank you for joining us virtually today for our session about how buying locally can help institutional food service build supply chain resilience. My name is Anna Richardson, and I'm the programs director at the Good Acre. Also with us today from the Good Acre are Steve Young-Burns, our wholesale manager, and Nikki Warner, our communications director, both of whom I know many of you know. Just a couple of Zoom housekeeping items before we dig in. Feel free to ask questions throughout the session via the Q&A function. So there's both a chat function at the bottom of your window and a Q&A. Try to use the Q&A if you can, but if questions end up in the chat box, we'll be monitoring both of those things. We hope to have about 10 minutes to answer questions at the end of the session. And if any kind of make sense to answer as we go, I can answer those too. We do have it set so that participants are muted today, just so we don't have any audio issues, but I'll keep an eye, and Nikki, my colleague, will keep an eye on those question windows, and we'll try to get all of your questions answered. Our session today will be kind of panel style. So we've got 3 awesome speakers, and we plan to wrap the whole event up by 9:30 so that those of you who need to get back to work can be on your way. So I'd like to introduce today's topic. It feels like the supply chain shortage is everywhere in the news right now. And I won't overstate the Good Acre and other local food providers' ability to mitigate what in some cases is a very serious problem, including for schools trying to serve breakfast and lunch to kids. However, trading some faraway sourced ingredients for local options is one way to make a supply chain more resilient. And all 3 of our speakers today are doing this in really creative ways. I'm excited to hear from them. Food hubs like the Good Acre are often an invisible part of the food system, but we can create efficiencies to sourcing locally. We often pitch our usefulness shortly as 1 order, 1 invoice, 1 delivery. Unfortunately, there are few food hubs serving wholesale buyers in our region, especially kind of in the more rural areas outside of the Twin Cities, which is something we hope changes in the future. And just for fun, if folks want to put in the chat function where you are, kind of what your connection to local food is. So if you have, if you serve food somewhere, or you're just kind of a person in the community who's interested, feel free to put that information in the chat. It's always fun to know where folks are from. So maybe Nikki or Steve could be our example and kick that off. And while folks are doing that, I am going to go ahead and introduce our first speaker today. And this is a great example of how a food hub can help an operation access produce from many different farmers. So Heidi Koh is the produce sourcing manager for Second Harvest Heartland. With a mission to end hunger, Second Harvest has been busier than ever during the past 18 months, serving folks in the Midwest experiencing hunger. In their effort to address the hunger divide, Second Harvest has made a huge investment in buying local and from farms owned by people of color, which is what brought them to the Good Acre in the first place. Second Harvest has committed to spending $1 million with the Good Acre on produce grown by BIPOC farmers over 3 seasons. This season was the first of those, as a part of their goal of reducing racial disparities in food security in Minnesota. So this is really big, awesome stuff. They're doing this in a way that really supports farmers by committing dollars ahead of the growing season and being flexible about the crops that they receive any given week. So thank you so much, Heidi, for being here, and I'll let you take it away.
All right, thanks, Anna. I'm super happy to be here to talk a little bit about Second Harvest Heartland and our partnership with the Good Acre, because it's just been a fabulous year. So again, my name is Heidi. I'm the produce sourcing manager at Second Harvest, and my job there is to bring in farm fresh produce. And I've been with Second Harvest about 8 years, and I bring in produce locally, regionally, and then nationally. So for example, this year we've probably brought in about 8 million pounds of local produce and about 25 million pounds of produce from around the country. After the murder of George Floyd and the unrest that followed, Second Harvest took an internal look at how we are living out our beliefs around equity. And we have a big focus on how we distribute food, but we took a look at how we source food and who we source from. And we saw a bit of a lack of diversity on the farms that we bring produce in from, a lack of diversity around gender, growers of color, and farm size. So we are now we wanted to change that. So working with the Good Acre was a way to do that. So this year we have sourced produce from the Good Acre from about 25 different growers of color. And the focus here for Second Harvest is not to end hunger on how and where we distribute food, but more on where we source food from, and how can we support and provide opportunity for some growers who are more often under-resourced than some other growers. So that is the emphasis and our focus. And it has really been an excellent year. And the reason for that is the Good Acre. We would not be able to, at Second Harvest, source from 25 plus smaller scale growers. Just the logistics would not work. So with the Good Acre acting as that food hub and that aggregator, we are able to purchase that product. One other thing that's different in our relationship with the Good Acre than with other produce that we brought in is all produce in the past has been donated, and then we will compensate with some reimbursement to cover some of the harvest or packaging costs. But we chose to purchase at full price because we believe in the local food system, and we believe in supporting these growers that might not have as many resources as some others. So we are purchasing at full price. Quality has been fantastic. Variety has been fantastic. And the other thing is the adaptability at the Good Acre. It's been a little bit of a learning curve for Second Harvest because we're used to bringing in, a full semi-load of one product, right? Well, we work on a large scale. So we bring in about 12 pallets a week of a variety of produce. And the Good Acre and working with Steve, it's been excellent as we've both sort of worked through the logistics of that and really made it a smooth and efficient system. So I'm excited for the next couple years, and hopefully beyond that. The goal is to increase the number of growers that we get product from. And we are committed to $350,000 a year for this year and the next 2 years. Another thing that has been really helpful is the number of what we would call culturally connected food produce items that we've been able to get, including sweet potato leaves, a variety of hot peppers, tomatillos, bok choy, daikon radish, bitterball eggplant. These are items that we usually have not sourced in. So those have been super valuable for the clients at the end of the supply chain that end up getting the produce that we bring in. We also have a program called Project Well at Second Harvest. And what that program is doing right now is supplying a box of shelf-stable food items to pregnant Somali women. And this is the first year that we have included produce. So along with this box of shelf-stable product, these women are also getting a box of fresh produce from the Good Acre. And that has some produce items that they normally would not be able to get, or that we normally wouldn't bring in, that they are used to in their culture. So that is another great way that this partnership is working. Benefits of buying local are huge. And as Anna said, the supply chain has been challenging. Another thing I'll point out is the freight market has been crazy expensive. So another excellent reason to purchase from the Good Acre right down the street, basically, because the cost of freight is so high these days. It is important to strengthen what I would call the local food web. And that's what's happening as we buy local through the Good Acre. We saw some lack of resiliency through the pandemic in our global and national food systems. And so the more that we can strengthen and support this local system, the better for everyone. That is everything that I had to share. Is there anything else, Anna, that you would like from me?
No, thank you so much, Heidi.
Mm-hmm.
That is really helpful. And if you have questions for Heidi, feel free to put those in the Q&A box or the chat function, and we'll hope to get to those at the end. We're so lucky, feel really lucky, feel really happy to be working with Second Harvest. And we're really just, really pleased about how this first of 3 and maybe more seasons went, especially considering the drought that we experienced in the beginning of the season. We were kind of unsure about how it would go, but we're really happy about where things have landed. So thanks so much.
You bet. I'm going to emphasize one more time the quality.
Thanks.
And how everybody has appreciated not only the quality of the product, but the quality of how it's packaged, and it's been efficient for our warehouse to manage it and move it around. So it's really been an excellent partnership. And
That's
one
really...
that I will emphasize again, we could not do without the Good Acre, because logistically we can't source from 25 different growers.
Totally, yeah.
Heidi, I will just say that, like, hearing you talk about freight costs, just really kind of like, expanded my perception of like what some of these supply chain issues are. And it's not simply just availability, but it's just simply receiving the same product that maybe you're still able to order, but getting it is just so much more expensive. So thanks for sharing that anecdote. That was just really interesting.
Yeah, it's really fun. So when I check in with Steve every week to hear, how many different farmers contributed items to the 1 truck or 2 trucks that are going to Second Harvest that week, I'm like, you got how many different 25, 30 different deliveries? It's amazing. It's our warehouse team does a great job.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. I will introduce our next speaker then. So our next speaker is Kelsey Brommel, and Kelsey is the Assistant Director of Nutrition Services at Robbinsdale Public Schools, where Farm to School Month, October's Farm to School Month, is underway. Robbinsdale is a medium-large district in the Northwest Metro of the Twin Cities. They serve about 8,000 students meals every day. They consistently include local items in their school menus, even throughout the 2020 and 21 school year, while feeding students who were learning and eating remotely. No small feat. Just yesterday, Nikki and I looked this up, we delivered purple sweet potatoes and carrots to Robbinsdale Cooper High and delicata squash to some of their elementaries, which doesn't mean they were on the menu yesterday, but delivery trucks went out yesterday. And Kelsey is going to share with us why Robbinsdale chooses to keep local on the menu, even when it's not always the easy or inexpensive option. So take it away, Kelsey.
Thank you so much, Anna, for inviting me today. I'm really happy to be here. As you said, we are a pretty large district. We have about 17 kitchens, 17 schools, and then we also satellite to 2 additional schools that just do not have kitchens of their own. We've been really fortunate to have received quite a bit of grant funding the past few years to be able to menu these items frequently. This year alone, we have spent $15,000 on local purchases in the past 6 weeks. And our ability to do that has really come from the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program, Harvest of the Month. We're a part of a pilot program through the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. And then we were also awarded the full tray grant from the Minnesota Department of Agriculture as well, which is a 1-to-1 match. So that's really allowed us to expand our offerings on the menu. We serve roughly 2 local vegetables on our high school menus every single week, about once a week at middle schools, and then twice a month at our elementary schools. So it's something we're really proud of. This year in particular, we've worked hard to try to integrate some protein and mainline items to our menus. 2 that come to mind right off the bat. At all of our elementary schools, we've swapped out just like a regular hot dog for a local Thousand Hills 100% beef, nitrate-free hot dog, and that's been really well received. Another one that we've included for the first time, just as a permanent cycle menu, Ferndale Farms, they create like a pre-cooked turkey burger that's been also extremely well received with all of our elementary students. At first, some of them were like, oh, is this made of beans? What is this? Why is it a different color? But after they tried it, we've gotten amazing feedback from all of the students, especially on some of those new mainline items. We are hoping to expand our protein items in the coming school year. As time allows, we'd really like to do taste testing with chuck roast. I actually talked to Steve yesterday about sourcing local wild rice to incorporate in our high school chicken wild rice soup. and wild rice pilaf. So that's kind of an idea of what we do with our farm to school program. One of the questions I kind of wanted to go through is why we select local items. A huge reason is just exposure for our students. A lot of students have not been exposed to radishes. I know I had never seen like a daikon radish or all of these different produce items until working with Robbinsdale area schools or even trying them. So it's really exciting for me too, as a staff member, to try some of these less popular produce items, especially on our menus. And they look so beautiful as well. Just like Heidi said, the quality has been impeccable, even with all of these crazy supply chain issues. One big surprise for us, when all of our other vendors are skipping deliveries or showing up later at odd times, we can always count on the Good Acre. I don't exactly know the name of the woman who delivers for us, but all of our staff rave about her. She's so friendly. She actually puts the cases of food away on the shelves in the cooler, and they're so appreciative of that. Any little thing that helps us save time for our staff has just been a huge, huge help. Another reason we purchase local is the flavor. When you're buying produce that's local and fresh, it tastes better because it's at that peak ripeness, and students can taste the difference. So that's been huge for us. One thing I'll add, like some of our elementary schools are pretty small. So when cases come 25, 35 pounds a case, that does pose a challenge for us. But how we've put these items on the menu, we've done it in a way that if they're serving carrots on a Friday, maybe they'll serve them again the following week on a different day so they can get through that case, and we're preventing food waste. It also helps with processing. Since a lot of these items come whole, we do have to spend that extra staff time actually putting them through. We have a RoboCoo that helps with processing and cutting some of these whole products. So they'll do all of that for their case, and they're ready to go the next time they're on the menu. One of the things you'll see on the photo that's on the screen right now, these are local green beans. I think these are just roasted with garlic, salt, and pepper and oil, and the kids actually really like these. We usually have them on the line with some orange chicken or teriyaki chicken, and that's gone over really well. A new one this school year we've tried actually just a week ago, purple sweet potatoes. Some kids thought that they were beets, and then it was a fun surprise for them when they realized they were actually sweet potatoes. In this photo, you'll see carrots, and these just have Parmesan and garlic on them. We also do a roasted honey butter variety as well. One other thing we've done with carrots with those larger cases that we can't always make use of the entire case. Last year during the pandemic, we found a really great harvest muffin recipe that required steaming and pureeing of the carrots, and it added a ton of moisture to these muffins. And we sent that home for distance learning. Parents absolutely loved them. Their kids were asking for them. It's something that we really hope to bring back when our staffing situation improves. That's probably been the largest challenge for us this year, is finding time to process some of this stuff and then try new items on our menu. But that is one that we really did enjoy doing during the pandemic and would love to bring back. Another way that we incorporated local items during the pandemic, through the fresh fruit and vegetable program, when we didn't have elementary school students actually in person, we were able to send home like whole acorn squashes with a recipe on how to cook and serve those at home. And that's something we wouldn't be able to do at school just because of they're a little harder to process and would take more time for our staff to do, but they were still exposed to that at home. Let me see if there's anything else. Oh, with supply chain issues, what's been really helpful, I've met with Steve pretty much once a month, and we kind of touch base mid-month about what's on the menu for the upcoming month. And we'll kind of talk through what's going to be in stock with enough for our entire district. And then he'll help me kind of decide maybe what can go in place of what we already had in our cycle menu. In fact, a lot of our high school mainline, or not mainline, the high school vegetables, we'll just write in there a Good Acre vegetable. And we kind of keep that open until I talk to Steve and we see what's going to be available. And then we'll pencil those in and add them for our upcoming cycle menu. Yeah, so that's kind of the Robbinsdale Farm to School program in a nutshell. I'm super happy to answer any questions that anybody has. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kelsey. We're so glad to be partners with you in the really cool work that you're doing. I love that story about acorn squash because you're so right. We've all been the ones in a home kitchen trying to get all the skin off of an acorn squash. Not that, you know, you can of course chop it and roast it with the skin on, but man, fun to send that home with families and have them practice at home. So yeah, if anyone has questions for Kelsey, go ahead and put those in the Q&A and we'll try to get those answered at the end. And I will introduce our final speaker. Last but certainly not least, we have Ornella Bejlagic Bierke. Ornella, I'm so sorry if I butchered that at all. Please correct me if that's the case. Ornella is the Director of Nutrition Services at Health Partners. Big job. Ornella is part of the team from Regents Hospital that approached Steve Youngburns in early 2020 to ask about sourcing traditional Hmong herbs used in postpartum meals because of the large number of Hmong patients served by the hospital. And they do a lot of other really cool work too, of course, but I just wanted to highlight this project today. The team of chefs at Regents worked with farmer May Lee of Mon Pa's Garden, that's a name a lot of you might recognize, to determine which herbs they needed, most of which May was already growing. And I'm really excited to hear Ornella share more about what led her team to look for those herbs and how the experience has been for the patients at Regents, and anything else Ornella wants to share about kind of why they value local at Health Partners. So thanks for being here, Ornella. I'll turn it over to you. And I think you're still on mute, Ornella. There we go.
Here I am. Good morning, everybody. I'm very happy to be here and very impressive two speakers before me. Regents Hospital being in St. Paul, and we know there's a huge Hmong community that lives here. We do have a lot of patients and a lot of young moms who come in and have their babies. And they always ask for chicken and rice soup. And we had it on the menu for many, many years, but it did not have any of the traditional herbs that an original Hmong mom soup they would have. So we just simply put some rice and the chicken and, you know, chicken broth, but that was not good enough. Thankfully, we had a chef that we hired, and he was a Hmong chef. And I met with him and asked him if he would help us actually get a real recipe for the soup that we were trying to make. So he went back home and he talked to his aunt and grandma and some other elders, and they gave him the big bunch of herbs. But the problem we had, nobody knew the names of the herbs. In a healthcare, we have to have everything nutritionalized, and you know, we have to have all the details because there's certain herbs that interact with certain medications certain ways. So we couldn't just take the herbs and cook it and, you know, be done with it. So at that time, Paku Hang was the Hmong village director. And we invited her and met with her, and she told us that she will find a way to help us in identifying and nutritionalizing and, you know, getting these herbs ready for us to serve in the healthcare setting. We picked 4 out of 10 herbs that seemed to be the more common recipe for the soup. And one of those herbs, it's called bloodleaf plant. And that's the plant that gives that soup that particular kind of purplish color that a lot of people were looking for. And also it's known that helps you with the blood loss after giving birth. So we still didn't have the name, but the Paku informed us that she do have some food scientists from the University of Minnesota, and they were able to identify the herbs and they were able to nutritionalize them for us and do all the chemicals that are in them. What we also did, we paid a visit to Hmong village and their farmers, and you can see that there's a picture. You see Nia, he's our chef who helped us do it. There's Mike, another executive chef, myself, our clinical nutrition manager, and our patient services manager. We heard some great stories in that visit. many different people from farms were telling us about herbs and just telling us their story. How, I think that it's a 40 days after you give birth, that's all you eat. And it helps to recover from the birth of the baby. We start serving the food and Care 11 heard about it. So Gia Vong actually called us, contacted, and she wanted to do a segment on Care 11 that they aired about the work we did and about soup and our chef. And with that, then University of Minnesota, actually the Fairview system, asked us if we would share. And in healthcare, when you're doing a good thing, you always want to share. So we shared the recipe with them. We worked with Steve. He did a great job finding a dedicated grower for us. So we are always guaranteed to have herbs on site. And for the winter time, we just buy a huge bulk of it and we portion it and we freeze it so we can serve it in the winter as well. Interesting thing is, it's not just for moms. Once we put it on our regular menu, but we also have in our general care patients, older Hmong people, they just love it. They order it every day. It's just a food that's it's comforting for them when they're here in the hospital and not feeling well. So it's been just a very good success, and we had so many great feedback about it, the taste and quality. So we're grateful to Good Acre to be able to work with us and provide these herbs on a consistent basis for us. And it was never the issue that we would run out or they would not have any what we needed. A couple other things I wanted to mention. We, as an organization and food service, Regents Hospital is huge, and we serve about 2,500 meals just for patients daily. Plus we have a retail side, and our purchasing power, it's huge. But we also, our labor, we have issue with labor just like everybody else. And we still are open to work with Steve and Good Acre. What we need, it's the processed vegetables. We don't have any opportunity to process our own here, but we did some purchasing, and we're going to go back to that as soon as COVID kind of calms down. We would purchase produce wherever Steve would have that week, and then we put up in our cafeteria, and we put up one size bag, and we say, fill up the bag, it's $5, and our staff loved it. So as soon as more staff is back on site and we have some visitors, we would like to do that. And just like somebody else mentioned, I think it was Kelsey, the produce is just the great quality. You can tell it's, some of the organic, and it's just, it was good to have people come in and just fill up the bag and go home with the fresh produce, and it was convenient for them too. So that's about that project. We're open to work more and see what we can do and help out. And I also wanted to say hi to Heidi, and I think we do a lot of work with you at the food insecurity, and we also started the donation from our overproduction. So I think we're all kind of here, together in this. So thank you.
Very cool. Thanks, Ornella, for sharing that. I loved hearing the kind of how that project got started. And yeah, it's really neat that it's right. It's not, doesn't just appeal to moms. It's just a really great thing to have on the menu. So now I'll open the floor for questions, and I see a couple have trickled in. And the first one, actually, I might direct at Steve first, our wholesale manager. I see that Steve, maybe you're typing a response, but I'd love to hear it on the air too. So Tiffany asked, what are the most important things you feel a farmer should do or prepare for if they aspire to supply to local institutions? And certainly Heidi, Kelsey, Ornella, if you have things to add after Steve takes a crack at this one, we'd love to hear from you too.
Yeah, planning and partnership go two ways on this to build the foundation of a good relationship. and a grower should reach out to find partners at an institution in this case, and that should go the other way too. Find specific partners that you want to work with, understand what they do for food safety, understand what they grow, and honestly, get to where you're comfortable with one word texts with them so they can say, I'm out of carrots this week, and you can go, okay, which I have with a lot of our growers. You need to be comfortable communicating with them so you can pivot when something is ready, early or late. Kelsey and I have a lot of ridiculously long email chains where we go, yes, no, thanks. So communication and trust and partnership, and get to where you have the foundation, the basis to be able to communicate and plan together. And then in your kitchen, know that you're not always going to get the thing you planned on that week, but you'll probably be able to get something else and be able to pivot to that and prepare a different item.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. Yeah, and so I heard, I think, yeah, Heidi and Ornella and Kelsey, I'm sure the same goes for you too, mentioned how, how grateful you are for the high quality of produce. So it sounds like, if whatever a farmer can do, of course, things affect the way that produce grows, but whatever a farmer can do to kind of get their kind of best quality produce out of the field and into their customers' hands sounds important. Are there other things you can think of that that farmers would, should do if they're starting to think about building these relationships? Heidi, I see you're off mute.
Yeah, I'll reiterate just one thing Steve mentioned is food safety, and at Second Harvest, and I'm sure with all three of us here who spoke today, that's pretty high on our list. So whatever food safety measures a farm can take are really crucial, and get you whatever you can do in the realm of food safety to get you into a position where different enterprises or organizations are comfortable buying from you, I think is huge.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like, I think sometimes a farmer hears food safety and thinks like, oh gosh, I have to have like all this paperwork or certain certifications. But I think it goes a long way just to be able to really confidently kind of describe what you do on your farm to practice food safety. Is that right? And of course, documentation helps, but it doesn't you don't necessarily have to have the highest, most expensive food safety certification, as long as you can really kind of demonstrate that you're taking steps on your farm to practice food safety, and can really confidently describe and probably show some evidence of practicing really general food safety. Is that right?
Yeah. Is that I would pass that over to Steve as the expert.
True, as where the produce comes into.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we visit farms multiple times during the season. We work with them on setting up hand wash stands, and we understand their general handling processes and sanitation procedures for the produce. And we work with a variety of different growers. So, we're comfortable with the difference between working with a hospital that may require a GAP certification versus Minneapolis Schools has their own certification process for food safety, and we go out and visit a lot of the farms with them when we set up a contract at the beginning of the season.
It's a great point. Another benefit of working with a food hub, we'll visit those farms for you and sort of take notes on what we know.
I
Nikki,
can just mention one thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
As far as food safety goes, and it would be very important to set up a system that in case that there's an outbreak, we should be able to find which farm food came from. So we don't have to recall all of the farms. So set up some kind of a lot system that each farmer would have, some kind of a bar, code to be scanned. And that would be a very important project probably to get done.
We have lot code tracking for everything we sell. We might have to recall everything from one grower. We would know it was coming from one grower. Not everybody tracks what field or part of a specific field it's coming from, but we can get down to the grower and the order level.
All right, we've got a good thought-provoking question from Ken Meter. So Ken asks, and Heidi, Kelsey, or Nella, whoever wants to answer this, feel free to kick in. So in line with the title of this webinar, Supply Chain Resilience, Building Supply Chain Resilience, how does each of you view the potential for making sure these exciting accomplishments are more widely practiced in other institutions? How do we get more corporate boards to embrace a role of helping build a resilient system and not just simply making better purchases? It's a tough one. And I think if you want to think about how it happened at your institution, that might even just be helpful.
I think exposure is important, and I feel like we are also our country. What I'm seeing, and I hope that this is true. I feel like people are a little more open, a little more inquisitive to looking at our food system. We've seen some significant failures in, like we can look at meat packing, for example, because there were, it's so consolidated, so much power in too few hands, and we saw from that to some failures, and everybody was afraid there would be no chicken in the grocery stores, you know. So there have been some things that have happened that hopefully are opening people's eyes to see, okay, what else can we do here? So exposure, I feel like is huge. I think that now is the time to be getting the word out because people are more open to hearing it. And Steve and I were fortunate enough to speak at a Feeding America conference. Second Harvest Heartland is a Feeding America food bank. It's a network of food banks across the US. There's about 200 of them, 200 Feeding America food banks across the US. And they asked us to speak about this partnership, and it was a great opportunity to get the word out. And from that, we've had a number of Feeding America communication employees reach out to us. And now one of the Good Acre farmers is going to be featured in their fall report. So I feel like now's the time to get the word out, talk to everybody you can to share these sorts of stories.
I'll also add, I think there's a lot of buy-in from customers when corporations are supporting local and, you know, promoting that on their own menus or what they're doing. I know at least for us, when we have these local items on our menu, we try to post them on social media to get the word out to families. And then the families will tell their kids, hey, when you're at school today, try that carrot. This is where it came from. So I think we have better participation for vegetables across the board when we're promoting the stories that come with them. It's not just the carrot, but it's how it's grown, where it came from, how we processed it when we post pictures like that. So I think for corporations, they can look at that too and say, you know, customers would appreciate this more if we're trying to source locally.
And I would agree too, promotion and exposure and talking about it. And that's how we get the Fairview Health System involved in this too. And they, you know, got the same herbs and they're doing the same recipe and they're buying from the Good Acre. So I agree with all.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Kind of tell the story and get people to get excited about what you're doing, not just sort of have a carrot that might look and definitely tastes different, but it's harder to get people to notice if you're not kind of surrounding it with the bigger picture, right? I think something that goes hand in hand with that I'm curious about from our three speakers is, did doing this work increase food costs kind of as part one? And then were the three of you part of a group that had to convince anyone, you know, that it was that either, you know, very at the beginning or kind of continually, do you get any pushback for if that is the case?
I would say staff buy-in is a huge hurdle. It's a lot more work to buy whole unprocessed produce, clean it, cut it. There's just a lot more that goes into it. And for staff that would prefer purchasing maybe pre-cut carrots, there is some staff buy-in that you have to work through. I think a lot of that comes through training. We haven't had a ton of time this year to focus on that, but in the past, we've done a lot of one-on-one training with staff. And through training, I think that makes them more confident and excited to serve these new items that require processing. Because when you're just handed a whole piece of produce and you don't necessarily know what to do with it, that would be kind of daunting and maybe turn you off from wanting to work with it. So training has been really helpful with getting staff to buy in on it. And I wouldn't say that it's increased our food cost much. We're able to balance it with, lower cost items through Department of Defense dollars. And then, like I said, we've had quite a bit of grant funding that's made it really accessible for us to include these items often.
I say at Second Harvest Heartland, everybody is 100% behind this. It's felt extremely positive at Second Harvest and at Feeding America. So that feels good to me. I sense momentum behind it for that reason. There's also been at what we've seen at Second Harvest Heartland, a lot of support in the community financially for this. So yes, it's definitely increased cost for us because as I mentioned earlier, we usually only take donated product and then small reimbursement for some packaging or harvesting fees, but now paying full price. So a significant increase in cost, but also just a lot of support, especially, sadly, after the murder of George Floyd and the unrest that followed that, it opened some people's eyes so that we definitely do have funders that want to support growers who have had less resources in the past. And I'm also excited that the Minnesota Department of Ag hired an emerging farmer outreach coordinator. So super excited to connect with her because I feel like that will also bolster this work.
I wouldn't say we didn't have any pushback. Actually, our CEO, Megan Remark, is extremely supportive of this work. But we know that, in a healthcare that budgets are tight and we have to do that balancing act. And I'm with Kelsey. We simply don't have capacity to do our own processing. And if it's just a vegetable, it would add just a minimal, additional cost, but it's the cost of processing that it's an issue here. So we're hoping maybe one day we'll get that resolved and be able to get more product from Good Acres.
Yeah, offering processed vegetables was on my to-do list this year, and we expanded so much this year in our sourcing of local produce from BIPOC growers. It was kind of hold on tight all season. We're going to build that into our planning for next year and see if we can actually schedule out and contract out some produce to be processed and frozen.
As soon as you have something, let us know.
Yeah, it sounds like, and this has been our experience totally with your three organizations, institutions. It helps a lot to have people kind of at the leadership level who are really in support of the work you're doing. And it's hard. I think it's, really hard work. I don't know if that speaks to anyone listening today to convince folks kind of in leadership roles if they're not already on board, even though it's really important work. And of course, it happens. And obviously that's how we've gotten here. But that's really great that you've got support at your organizations. There was just one more question that I think, Steve, you also typed an answer, but I thought I'd open it up and answer it kind of live too, just because I know there are other folks from schools here. So Sammy asked about the wild rice source, if we do have a local wild rice source like Kelsey was talking about. And if and when we find one, will other schools be able to access it too?
Yeah, for sure. And Sammy, I feel a little silly that we didn't figure this out 6 or 8 weeks ago when we first started talking about featuring wild rice as a harvest of the month item. I do have a couple calls out. I'm pretty confident that we're going to be able to offer wild rice to districts that buy from us. It might be something that we can offer statewide as well. That would require a different shipping solution. And yeah, so I hope to have more information later this week.
Yeah, working on it. What a cool, that'll be a really cool thing to offer. It feels so kind of local to Minnesota or the Midwest.
Yeah, we just started offering kerns of flour, by the way, which
right.
sort of falls in the same area of promoting locally grown agriculture items. And so we're actually offering kerns on our order portal. And when we get the wild rice lined up, I will add that there.
Awesome. All right, well, I'll kind of wrap us up. And I just want to say thank you again to our three speakers, Heidi, Kelsey, Ornella, for sharing about why your operations choose to invest so much locally. Supply chain issues are having a significant impact on food service across the country, and we know that farmers in our region have the capacity and the desire to step in and help wherever they can. So I hope those of you in attendance feel inspired to connect with farmers in your area, our area. Although I saw we have someone from Alaska, that's really exciting. So that's, yeah, farmers in your area. Curious about planning a menu around what's in season and feel confident that you can make local food work in a variety of ways in your food service operation too. So just some contacts to keep in mind. If you want to know more about the Good Acres work and our programs generally, or have lingering questions in response to anything that our speakers shared today, feel free to reach out to Nikki Warner. And we will send her email address in a follow-up email before the end of the week. She's our communications director. And then if you're looking to place an order with the Good Acre or want to talk about planning for next season, please do reach out to Steve. Kind of now is the time to start planning for 2022, believe it or not. So we'll share his contact info in a follow-up email as well. And that's really all we have for you today. So we'll end a little early here. Thank you so much, speakers, and have a great Wednesday, everyone.